The door to the penthouse suite of the Han Empire Tower in Seoul exploded open at 2:47 in the morning. Olachi ran. Her feet were bare against the cold marble floor, her white hospital gown still stained from the delivery room just 6 hours ago. Her body was not ready for this. Her stitches pulled with every step, a hot tearing pain that shot from her abdomen up through her ribs. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Behind her, she could hear them. Two of Ihan's men, their footsteps heavy and deliberate, not running because they did not need to run. They knew she had nowhere to go. Olachi. The voice came from behind her, low, calm, terrifyingly calm. Stop. She stopped, not because she wanted to, not because she was weak. She stopped because she knew that voice. She had loved that voice once. She had pressed her ear against that chest in the dark just to hear it rumble when he spoke. She had built an entire world inside that voice and called it home. She turned around slowly. Ihan, the Korean Mafia boss, stood at the end of the corridor. 6'2", black suit, no tie, his dark hair slightly disheveled, the only sign that tonight had shaken even him. His face was unreadable. It was always unreadable. That was the thing about Ihan that had drawn her in and destroyed her at the same time. He looked at her the way a man looks at a problem he is calculating how to solve. Not a woman, not the mother of his children, a problem. Go back to the room, he said quietly. You told them to take my babies. Her voice cracked on the last word. You told them to take my sons. Something moved across his face, gone before she could name it. They are Han heirs, he said. They will be raised as Han heirs. They are my sons. The words tore out of her chest. I carried them for 9 months. I almost died on that table tonight bringing them into this world, and you— Her voice broke completely. She pressed her hand against her mouth. She would not fall apart in front of him. She had promised herself that 6 months ago when she first understood what kind of man she had fallen in love with. She would not give him her tears. You didn't even come into the room, Ihan. You didn't even hold them. He said nothing. Look at me, she stepped toward him. Look at me. He did, and that was almost worse. Because his eyes were not cruel, they were empty, and empty was so much more devastating than cruel. The arrangement was always clear, he said. I was never an arrangement to you. She searched his face desperately. I know you, I know who you are underneath all of this. We were real. What we had was— Olachi. His voice was very quiet now, a warning wrapped in silk. Don't what? Don't remind you that you held me while I cried after my mother died? Don't remind you that you learned to cook jollof rice because I was homesick and you didn't want me to be sad? Tears were streaming down her face now, and she hated herself for every single one of them. Don't remind you that you told me that you had never felt this way about anyone? For one single devastating second something cracked behind his eyes. Then it sealed shut. Go back to the room, he said again. My sons stay in the Han wing. You will be compensated. A car will take you to the airport in the morning. The world tilted. Compensated. She repeated the word like she was tasting poison. You are going to compensate me. You will want for nothing. I want my children. The scream ripped out of her so raw and so primal that one of the guards actually flinched. She did not care. She did not care about anything in that moment except the 2 tiny boys she had held for exactly 43 minutes before they were taken from her arms by a woman in a gray suit who would not meet her eyes. You cannot do this. You cannot take my babies and put me in a car like I am a transaction. I am their mother. Ihan looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. Before we go any further, if you are watching this right now, and you have ever loved someone who made you feel invisible, this story is for you. If you have ever given everything to a person and received silence in return, this story is for you. This is the kind of story that is going to make you feel seen, make you feel rage, make you feel heartbreak, and make you feel hope, sometimes all in the same episode. If this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe right now, because we do not do halfway here. We do not do weak women or simple stories. We do real, we do raw, we do the kind of drama that stays with you. Like this video, share it with every woman who needs to hear this story, and let's get into it. Because honey, we are just getting started. It was 3 years ago in Lagos, Nigeria, the first time Olachi Adeze Okonkwo saw Ihan Han. She was in the process of threatening a man twice her size with a broken bottle of Hennessy. I will not ask you again, she said, her voice completely level, the jagged glass pointed at the man's throat with the steadiness of someone who had grown up learning that in Legos, you either project power or you become prey. Return my client's money or I will make sure this night ends very differently than you planned. The man, a property developer named Chief Emeka Obi, who had defrauded 17 market women of their life savings, looked at the glass and then at the small fierce woman holding it and laughed. He stopped laughing when she pressed it close enough that he could feel the cold edge against his Adam's apple. Okay. He was sweating now. I'll transfer it right now. Tonight, Olachi said. All of it. With interest. From across the dimly lit very important person lounge of Echo Hotel, a man sat very still and watched the entire exchange with the focused attention of someone who had just seen something genuinely unexpected. Ihan Han was not a man who was surprised often. He had been in rooms with presidents and warlords. He had sat across from men who would make ordinary people lose sleep just from making eye contact. He did not impress easily. But the woman with the broken bottle impressed him. She was tall for a Nigerian woman, dark-skinned with the kind of rich, deep complexion that looked like it had been carved from something precious. She wore a simple red dress and gold earrings, and she was absolutely incandescent with righteous anger, and she had absolutely no idea how extraordinary she looked in that moment. His associate leaned over. Should we intervene? No, Ihan said quietly. He picked up his glass of water. He never drank alcohol, another thing Olachi would learn later, and watched her. She doesn't need us to. She didn't. Chief Emeka made the transfer, all of it, with interest. When it was done, Olachi stepped back, straightened her dress, handed the broken bottle to a waiter with a polite, sorry for the inconvenience, and walked toward the exit like she had simply ordered dinner. She walked directly past Ihan's table. He stood up. She glanced at him with the particular expression of a woman who has already assessed a man and filed him under not my problem tonight. That was impressive, he said. Thank you, she said without stopping. I have a business proposition for you. I have a full client list. I pay above market rate. So does my current employer. I pay significantly above market rate. She stopped, turned, looked at him properly for the first time. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful. Clean lines, dark eyes, a stillness about him that should have been peaceful but felt more like the stillness of deep water, the kind you don't swim in because you cannot see the bottom. What kind of business? She asked. Security consulting, he said. For the Han Group. She had heard of the Han Group. Everyone in certain circles had heard of the Han Group. She did not know the full extent of what the Han Group actually was, not yet. That knowledge would come later, and it would come at a price. One meeting, she said. I'll hear the proposition. I'm not promising anything beyond that. One meeting, he agreed. He held out his hand. She looked at it for a moment before she shook it. Later she would think about that handshake, that first point of contact, how she had felt something move through her like a current, and told herself it was just the adrenaline from the confrontation with Chief Emeka. She had been lying to herself even then. The meeting became 2 meetings. The 2 meetings became dinner. The dinner became walks along Victoria Island at midnight because Olachi could not sleep in new environments, and Lagos at night was the only version of the city that felt quiet enough to think in. Ihan walked beside her and said very little, and somehow his silence was the most comfortable silence she had ever sat in. You don't talk much, she said one night. I talk when I have something to say. Most men talk constantly and say nothing. I know, he said, it's inefficient. She laughed, genuinely, the kind of laugh that surprised her because it came from somewhere unguarded. He looked at her when she laughed with an expression she could not fully decode, something focused and almost pained, like a man looking at a light source that is too bright but cannot look away. Tell me something about yourself, she said. Something real, not the Han Group, not business, you. He was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. I grew up speaking 3 languages, he said finally, Korean at home, English at school, and silence everywhere else. My father believed emotion was weakness. He ran the family the way he ran the organization, no warmth, total control. He paused. I swore I would not become him. And have you? Another long pause. I don't know, he said honestly. And the honesty of it hit her somewhere deep, because she understood instinctively that Ihan Han did not offer honesty to many people. Perhaps to no one. "You're nothing like what I expected," she said softly. He looked at her. "What did you expect?" "Cold, arrogant, untouchable." "And what am I?" She considered him seriously. "Still cold sometimes, never arrogant, and not as untouchable as you want people to think." Something shifted in his face. Not a smile exactly, something quieter and more significant than a smile. He reached out and tucked a loose braid behind her ear. His fingers barely grazed her cheek. It lasted less than 2 seconds. It rearranged something inside her completely. The world he lived in revealed itself slowly. The Han Group was not just a corporation. Olachi understood this within her first month working with Ihan. It was an empire built on legitimate business and illegitimate power, and the line between the two was something only Ihan could see clearly. He ran it with absolute precision. Men twice his age deferred to him. Enemies disappeared quietly. Allies prospered visibly. She had grown up in Lagos. She was not naive about power or how it operated, but the scale of what Ihan controlled was something different entirely. "Does it bother you?" he asked her one evening. They were in his temporary residence in Lagos, a penthouse that looked out over the Atlantic, and she had just watched him end a phone call that she understood had determined the fate of a shipping contract worth more than most countries' GDP. "Should it?" she countered. "Most people who find out what I am either want to run or want to use me," he said. "You did neither." "I'm still deciding," she said lightly. He was not amused and also completely amused. That contradiction was one of her favorite things about him, the way he could be simultaneously severe and secretly entertained. "Stay," he said, just that. One word. But from Ihan, one word carried the weight of paragraphs. "In Lagos?" she asked carefully. "Near me," he said, and looked away as if he had said too much, as if the admission had cost him something. Olachi looked at this man, this complicated, controlled, quietly devastating man, and felt herself making a decision that every sensible part of her was screaming against. She stayed. What nobody tells you about loving a powerful man. Nobody tells you about the loneliness. They see the penthouse and the travel, and the way he looks at you, like you are the only solid thing in a room full of smoke, and they think, she is so lucky. They don't see the nights he disappears for 3 days, and you cannot call him because the phone might be monitored. They don't see the way his world slowly reorganizes itself around you without your permission. Your friends become security risks. Your independence becomes a liability. Your name becomes something people whisper with a particular kind of careful reverence that has nothing to do with who you actually are. Olachi felt it happening, and she fought it every step. "I need my own work," she told him 7 months in. "I need to keep my clients. I need to not be just yours." "You are not just mine," he said. "Then why did your head of security tell my client that my services were no longer available?" Silence. "Ihan, it was a security measure. It was control," she said flatly. "And we are not doing that. I am not a possession." He looked at her with those unreadable dark eyes, and she held his gaze and refused to be the first to look away. "You're right," he said finally. She blinked. She had prepared for a fight. She had not prepared for immediate acknowledgement. "I will have it reversed," he said. "Today." "Today," he agreed. She studied him. "Why do you do that? Pull people close and then try to contain them?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because the things I care about get used against me," he said. "Everyone who has ever mattered to me has become a target. I don't—" He stopped, started again. "I don't know how to care about something without trying to protect it, even when the protection is the problem." And there it was, underneath the possession, underneath the control. A man who was genuinely terrified of losing what mattered to him. A man whose love language was armor because he had grown up in a world where softness got people killed. She crossed the room and took his face in both her hands. "I am not going anywhere," she said. "But you have to let me exist. You have to let me be a person and not just something you're guarding." He closed his eyes, leaned into her hands like a man who had not been touched gently in a very long time. "I'm trying," he said quietly. She believed him. That was her first mistake. No, that is not fair. Believing him was not a mistake. He was trying. The mistake was thinking that trying would be enough. The pregnancy she found out on a Tuesday. 2 lines. Bathroom of the Lagos office. Her hands completely steady because Olachi Okonkwo did not shake. She had learned that at 11 years old when her father left, and her mother looked at her and said, "You are the strong one, Nin. You don't shake." She sat on the edge of the bathtub for a long time, then she called him. "I need to see you," she said. "I'm in a meeting. I need to see you now, Ihan." Something in her voice reached him through the phone. Within 40 minutes he was at the office. She showed him the test without saying anything. He looked at it for a very long time. Twins, the doctor would confirm 3 weeks later. 2 heartbeats, strong and synchronized, flickering on the ultrasound screen like 2 small flames. Olachi had cried immediately, the overwhelmed, joyful, terrified tears of a woman who had not planned this, but felt her whole body saying yes anyway. She had reached for Ihan's hand. He had given it to her. But even then, even in that room with those 2 flickering heartbeats, she had felt something in him pulling back, recalculating. The way he looked at the screen was not the way she had hoped. It was not wonder, it was something more complicated, something that looked, if she was honest, like a man who had just seen his world become significantly more complicated, and was already managing the implications. She told herself she was imagining it. She was not imagining it. The pregnancy moved her to Seoul. "For safety," he said. "The Han Medical Facility is the best in the world. I want you to have everything you need." It sounded like love. It felt like love. She was in a penthouse above a city that glittered like a circuit board, and she had every comfort imaginable, and she was desperately, quietly homesick in a way she could not fully articulate to him, because every time she tried he would solve it. More Nigerian food. A video call arranged with her mother, a surprise visit from her best friend Chisum that he had organized and paid for, and the solutions were so genuine and so thoughtful that she felt ungrateful for still feeling the ache. But the ache was not about jollof rice or her mother's voice. The ache was about being known. Seoul was Ihan's world. In Lagos she had been herself. Olachi, formidable, known, rooted. In Seoul she was the Korean Mafia boss's woman. A beautiful curiosity, a secret that people in Ihan's circle acknowledged with careful neutrality and discussed in rooms she was not in. She heard things. She is temporary. Han Ihan will never take an African woman as a permanent partner. It is not how the family operates. The children will be Han. She will be compensated. She confronted him. "Is that what this is?" The words came out very quietly because the quiet was all that was standing between her and completely falling apart. "Am I temporary?" "You are not temporary," he said immediately. "Then what am I?" she pushed. "Because I have been in Seoul for 6 months and I have met exactly none of your family, been to none of your official events, been introduced to nobody as anything other than a colleague. I am carrying your sons, Ihan, 2 boys, and I feel like a secret. You are not a secret. Then take me somewhere and introduce me as what I am." The pause that followed was very long. "It's complicated," he said finally. She heard everything in those 2 words. She heard his family's expectations and the organization's politics, and the particular specific weight of being Han Ihan and the heir to an empire that had very specific ideas about what his life was supposed to look like. She heard all of it, and she understood. And the understanding broke something in her quietly and completely. Jae-won and Jae-min Han arrived at 8:34 and 8:41 p.m. on a rainy Thursday in Seoul. Olachi pushed them into the world with her best friend Shisum holding one hand and a nurse holding the other because Ihan was not in the room. He was outside. Handling something, his assistant had said apologetically. "He will be in shortly." He did not come in. When they finally placed both boys on her chest, warm and impossibly small, their little faces scrunched and furious at the cold new world, she forgot everything, every fear, every ache, every unanswered question. She looked at her sons and felt something so immense move through her that it had no name in any language she spoke. "Hello," she whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Jae-won grabbed her finger with a grip that was startling in its strength. Jae-min made a sound like a small indignant question. She laughed through tears. 43 minutes later, the woman in the gray suit arrived. "Standard Han family protocol for heirs," she said smoothly. "The children will be moved to the Han family wing for observation and care." They are with me, Olachi said. It is standard protocol. They are with me. Each word dropped like stone. The woman looked uncomfortable, made a phone call just outside the room, came back. Mr. Han has confirmed the protocol, she said quietly. The world went very still. Olachi looked at Chisum. Chisum's face had gone tight with a fury she was barely containing. Get out, Olachi said to the woman in the gray suit. Her voice was dangerously calm. Get out of this room right now. The woman left and came back 20 minutes later with 2 of Ihan's men. And that was when Olachi ran. She watched him walk away from her. Her children were behind a door she could not open. Her body was in agony. She was in a country that was not hers, in a building owned by a man who had just looked at her like she was a logistical issue, with nowhere to go and no one coming to save her. This is the moment, the story says, where a lesser woman would collapse. Olachi Okonkwo did not collapse. She walked back to her room, she sat down, she picked up her phone. And she called the one person she had never wanted to involve in this, the one person she had kept carefully separate from her life with Ihan because she had always known, somewhere deep in knowing, that this person might one day be necessary. The line rang twice. Olachi. The voice on the other end was deep and calm and terrifyingly competent. Uncle Dre, she said. Her voice did not shake. I need you. A pause. Where are you? Seoul, Han Empire Tower. Another pause. Longer. Waited. Olachi. His voice had changed. Something underneath it now. Something careful. What are you doing in a Han building? It's a long story. How long have you been connected to Waihan Han? Something about the way he said the name made her go very still. 2 years, she said carefully. Why? Uncle Dre, how do you know that name? The silence that followed was the loudest silence of her life. Because, her uncle said slowly, Ihan Han is the man who killed your father. The phone slipped from her hand. Outside in the Han family wing, 2 small boys slept, unknowing, and in the corridor somewhere, Ihan Han stood at a floor-to-ceiling window looking out over the city he controlled, his reflection looking back at him, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, his hands were not entirely steady. He had made a terrible mistake. He just didn't know yet that he wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Olachi just found out that the man she loves, the father of her children, killed her father. But what her uncle doesn't know, what nobody knows yet, is that Ihan has a file he has carried for 2 years, a file with Olachi's real last name on the cover, her father's name, and a photograph paper clipped inside it. Of a 12-year-old girl. He knew who she was before Lagos, he knew before the broken bottle, he knew before the midnight walks, he knew before the twins, the question that will shake everything. Did he fall in love with her in spite of what he knew, or was she never an accident at all?